All right, so maybe you've been kicking around the idea of starting a home inspection business. Or, hey, maybe you've already done a few inspections and you're really looking to level up your business. Well, you're in the right place because today we're going to dive deep into how to take your home inspection business, from those first few inspections to expert witness level.
It's a really interesting field, I have to say. And you're right, it's not just about knowing the difference between like a floorboard and the roof, right? It's about making sure you can build a business that can last, that people trust, and that'll bring you success for years to come.
And, when we were going through your notes earlier, one thing that really jumped out was this whole idea of risk. You even circled liability a couple of times. Seems like that's been on your mind.
Well, yeah, it's kind of the elephant in the room in this business,
no
right?
question.
I mean, think about it. Your work, your assessment, it could actually make or break what might be the biggest purchase in someone's life.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, so you got to make sure all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Oh, and of course, you absolutely need solid, like rock solid errors and omissions insurance.
So like a safety net. But I guess it's even better to not need to use it at all, right?
100%. And that's why you got to be so meticulous. I'm talking detailed reports, tons of pictures, go through all those checklists. Basically, you need to be able to prove how thorough you were and never, ever hesitate to bring in a specialist if you're even a little unsure about something.
Way better to be safe than sorry, especially when you're dealing with people's houses, their money, the biggest investment. Now, I noticed you had bookmarked a few articles on the latest home inspection tech job. What caught your eye there?
Well, I'm a bit of a gadget geek.
Just a little.
But really, this industry's changing so quickly these days. Building codes get updated, there are new materials all the time, and people expect more and more, so you gotta keep learning.
So you can't just, coast on what you already know.
Not even a little bit. Remember that article we were talking about? The one about the inspector who, doubled his business in a year?
Yeah.
Yeah. He said it was all because he invested in those thermal imaging cameras. People loved it, and it meant he could charge a bit more for that higher level of service,
Okay, so turning that expertise into profit. But it's not all about fancy tech, is it? You also mentioned something about diversifying your clients.
You got it.
Yeah.
You can't put all your eggs in one basket, as they say, even if it's a really good basket full of referrals from real estate agents.
Right.
You got to think bigger,
So build relationships with contractors, with builders, maybe even mortgage lenders.
Exactly. It's like creating your own, web of referrals. Remember that inspector, I think we saw him on the forum, who partnered with that contractor training school?
Yeah.
They sent him a ton of referrals, and he got to be the expert for all these new contractors.
Smart, right?
Now that is thinking outside the toolbox. Speaking of which, let's talk a bit more about technology.
It's a pretty big deal in this line of work these days.
It's not just a fad, This is the future of the industry. Remember all those notes on drone inspections?
Oh, yeah. Those were interesting.
Those aren't just for those cool aerial shots anymore. They let you see parts of a property that used to be a pain, like needing scaffolding. And even then, it could still be risky.
Yeah, and probably saved a few inspectors a nasty fall.
Right. It's about keeping everyone safe, but it's also about working smarter, and it shows your clients you care. When you show up with those cutting-edge tools, it says something,
It says you're worth every penny they're paying you.
Now you're getting it.
So we've talked about risk, tech, and building a solid client base. But before we jump into the really business-savvy stuff, I have to know, how do you keep up with the demands of this job? I mean, you're always on the go, always making big decisions, dealing with clients. How do you not burn out?
That's the thing about this job. It's so rewarding, but it can be really demanding for sure. Remember that forum thread about inspector burnout? Everyone was chiming in. The big takeaway wasn't about working less. It was about working smarter.
So, prioritizing, delegating, finding ways to streamline things.
You got it. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? You need to set boundaries. You got to take care of yourself. It's not just about you. It's about building a business that'll actually last,
It's like they say, you got to have a strong foundation if you want to build a strong house.
And you got to have a clear head if you want to inspect it. That actually reminds me of something you pointed out about becoming an expert witness. It's not just about knowing the technical stuff. It's also about building a reputation, like a really strong reputation for integrity.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're dealing with legal stuff, going to court even. Your word has to be credible.
Exactly. And that starts way before a lawyer ever calls you up, right? It's about how you handle yourself, every inspection, every client, every single decision you make in your business.
So ethical behavior, that's
Yeah.
got to be the foundation for that expert witness career path.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
You remember that case study we talked about, the inspector who got kicked off a case because of, like, a conflict of interest?
Oh, yeah. Talk about a career killer.
No kidding.
How can inspectors avoid something like that?
Honesty is key. You got to be upfront about everything. Your pricing, how you work. If there are any limits to what you can do, just be transparent about it all. And never, ever let personal stuff get in the way of your professional judgment. Money can't cloud your judgment.
It's about being the most trustworthy person in the room, even when it's tough.
Exactly. And speaking of tough, can we talk about pricing for a sec?
Sure.
You mentioned trying to find that sweet spot, right? Like where you're competitive, but you're also charging what you're worth.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like walking a tightrope sometimes.
It's all about figuring out what makes you valuable. You're not just inspecting a house. You're giving people peace of mind, right? And remember all that tech we were talking about? That's just not cheap. Don't be afraid to charge a fair price for a premium service. You know what I mean?
So basically, own my worth, invest in the business, and make sure I'm communicating that value to clients.
You got it. Now you're talking. And speaking of investment, let's talk about, well, the money stuff. It's not just about making money. It's about managing it properly, too.
Because those inspection fees need to cover more than just my morning coffee.
Right. Retirement, taxes. What if your car breaks down? And then there's new equipment. It adds up fast.
Where do you even start with all that?
You remember that financial planning guide?
Yeah.
The first thing they say is so simple, but people forget it. Track your money.
Like know where it's coming from and where it's going.
Exactly. Once you've got a really clear picture of that, then you can start budgeting, saving, and figuring out the best ways to invest.
And that, figuring out how to invest part, that's where it gets interesting. We've talked about tech, but what about other smart investments for home inspectors specifically?
Besides the obvious things like putting money away for retirement and having some savings for emergencies, what about you? Investing in yourself? All those courses, conferences, getting the certifications, those are all investments that'll pay off big time.
So the more specialized you are, the more clients will pay for your expertise.
Exactly. And don't forget about networking. Joining those professional organizations, going to industry events, that's how you meet people, build relationships, and get more referrals. Those are investments too.
It's like they say, it's not always what you know, it's who you know.
Right. But in this line of work, it helps to know both.
That's for sure. Now, before we get to our last big takeaways, one more thing from your notes I want to hit, that work-life balance thing.
Ah, the work-life balance. Yeah, that's a tough one. A lot of people who work for themselves struggle with that, especially when they're first starting out.
It's easy to get caught in that hustle, always thinking about the next client, the next inspection, the next dollar.
For sure. And burnout is real, and it's not something to be proud of. Remember that study? The one about how working too much makes you less productive?
Yeah. So working yourself to the bone doesn't actually help anything.
Nope. You got to work smarter, not harder, right? Set those boundaries, make time for yourself, take care of yourself, and make time for things you actually enjoy, not work stuff.
So a happy inspector is a better inspector.
100%. And you know what? That leads perfectly into our final takeaway for today. It's all about the long game,
Long game, yeah.
You had that quote, I think it was in one of those articles that really stuck with me. Building a business is a marathon, it's not a sprint.
So true.
And just like running a marathon, you got to pace yourself. You can't go all out right away or you'll never make it.
You'll hit that wall. So find a good pace for yourself, build good habits early on, and don't be scared to take a break if you need one.
Exactly. Your business should make your life better, not take over your life.
Right.
So invest in yourself, take care of yourself, make good choices for yourself, the kind that will still matter years from now.
Because at the end of the day, a successful business isn't just about how much money you make or how many inspections you do. It's about being proud of what you built. Something that reflects you, something that makes your life better.
I could have said it better.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. We talked about managing risk, all that new tech, and how to make your business last.
We talked about the skills you need, how to run a business, and maybe even more importantly, how to think like a successful business owner.
And we even touched on how all of this can set you up for bigger things down the road, like that expert witness stuff.
Shoot for the stars, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you got to build a strong foundation if you want to reach those goals.
That's the key.
Now, before we wrap up, I always like to leave our listeners with a few things to remember. So What are your top 3 tips for someone who wants to make their home inspection business amazing?
Okay, top 3. Got it. Number 1, never stop learning. This industry is always changing, so keep learning new things and you'll always be ahead of the curve.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2, your reputation is everything. Make sure you always act with integrity. People need to know they can trust you.
Makes sense. And number 3.
Don't forget about other people. Networking is so important. Partner with people, exceed expectations, always go the extra mile for people.
Those are some great tips.
And you know what? One more thing.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Running a business is hard work, but it's also so rewarding. Enjoy the good times, learn from the mistakes, and don't forget why you started doing this in the first place.
It's all about passion. So there you have it, your crash course, deep dive, whatever you want to call it, on the world of home inspection. Remember, building a business takes time. It's a journey, not a race. Don't give up. Celebrate your wins. Keep learning. Keep growing. And until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.